Now let's turn our attention to open panels and windows in Photoshop. What windows and panels you will have open boils down to personal preference, and how your workspace will look like is your own choice. But in general, in our work, we don't need dozens of panels and windows that are standing by, waiting, but are rarely used. I personally have just a few open panels, but with the help of which I have nearly everything I need in my work. What I need are the Layer panel, the Info panel, History, Channels, Paths, and Actions. I keep them minimized so that I can use the rest of the work environment for the photos that are open on the desktop, because the bigger they are, the more we can focus on the details. The first thing I do with the picture already open is to analyze it and decide what I like about it, and what I want to keep, what I don't like, and I want to remove. I'm eliminating things that seem redundant to me and distractions. I don't start by focusing on the details in close-up. On the contrary, I try to get an overall look at it from afar to see what I need to keep and what to eliminate. After I look at it when it's open in Photoshop, I'll create a new, clean, blank layer where I'll mark everything I want to remove. The reason I create an empty layer instead of duplicating the background is that by creating an entire copy of the background, I'll increase the size of the file. And because the files that we work on sometimes reach a size of 2 GB, we want to keep them as light as possible. Whether we call them corrections or action plans, we're creating an empty layer that we'll use to work from, so we can remember what we've marked as tasks. I mark the corrections I want, and then create a help group that creates other temporary adjustment layers to see what's not noticeable at a first glance. The help group contains several layers. A black and white layer that will make our photo black and white, and will remove all colors so that we can see only the textures and not be distracted by the colors in the image. This black and white adjustment layer is without additional settings, so we don't need to add anything to it. I have seen people tune up the layer to their liking with some settings and effects to see the details of the photos more. But this isn't the right way to do it, because adjusting the settings of the black and white adjustment layer, you are modifying the colors in the image, and we're trying to correct and see better the texture and the light in the image, rather than its colors. We'll make the texture more visible with other tools like curves adjustment layers set on screen and multiply blending options in a few seconds. The second layer we're going to create is the curves that we set to screen, and so that the dark parts of the image can stand out more. And we'll rename it to Screen to know exactly what it does, namely, it lights things up. The next layer we'll create again with curves, but this time it'll be on Multiply to darken the image so we can see and work on the bright areas of the photo. The idea of this type of work is to distinguish all processes on separate layers so that there's no surprises, and if something goes wrong in later stages, we have everything separated to the last step. So if need be, you only have to rework part of the picture, not the whole image. For example, I don't do everything on a single layer, such as the base cleaning, liquefy, etc. Everything should be separated to minimize the possibility of errors that may occur. The second reason for the distinction and arrangement of this method of operation is that this way things are much neater and to maintain a clean and fresh working environment. You wouldn't be very happy to open a document you worked on a year ago and have to take 15 minutes to figure out which layer to work on if everything in the project is scrambled and untidy. Once we're done with the help group, we can continue with the next steps of the work process. I'm cleaning the face with the healing brush or spot healing brush. I personally don't use the patch tool for such work, as it often leaves hard boundaries in places where textures are changing. I use the healing and spot healing brush at hardness of 50% because over time, I came to the conclusion that these values are best for similar tasks when working on portrait or beauty images. Because if the hardness is too little, it can create very soft edges on the skin, and textural differences may appear, creating the illusion that there are stains on the skin. Of course, it's not a rule, and it's good to experiment and see which level suits your working mode and picture the most. The next thing, after we've created the help group to help us see better the details of the image, and a blank layer on which we marked our desired corrections, we should create another empty layer, on which we'll carry out the basic cleaning. I'll rename it Healing. I'll use the spot healing brush, and if I see that the Auto tool is not doing very well, I'll switch to the healing brush, with which I can choose the places from which I can get a clean texture to replace the existing one, without relying on the software to do it for me. Change the size of the tool with the large brackets or by holding down Alt with the right mouse button and moving left or right to resize it and up and down to change the hardness. On this stage of the retouching process, we will focus on the removal of the big flaws of the texture of the image, not on the lighting differences of the skin. We'll fix them later with dodge and burn. It's of great importance to know that when working on an empty layer, you should activate the checkbox, Sample All Layers, if you're using the Spot Healing Brush tool, and you should select Type. I personally use Content Aware, which means that when you enable this option, Photoshop will take automatic textures around the place you want to replace to get the best results there. If you use the manual selection tool where you want to replace the healing brush, you must select Sampled from the Source option, and from the Sample drop-down, select Current and Below or All Layers to work on an empty layer. Because otherwise Photoshop won't understand where to take from because the layer is empty. This way, you guarantee flexibility in your work, and there will be no problems to save both the original image, the background, and a separate layer with the corrections made. When I work near edges, such as on this eyebrow, I use the manual tool to manually select the places from which I get the texture, and I try to do it in the best possible way. For example, I'll select from this place and continue the line like that. Also, I'm trying to get textures from clean places with similar textures and replace the things I don't like. For example, I won't take from her eyebrow and put it on the forehead, but rather take from this place and place it like this. The fade option is very convenient when we want to keep part of the last effect that we have applied. For example, adjustment layers can be created as effects, and you can reduce their percentages afterwards. Effects that are not applied as separate layers can be faded. That is, you apply a fade command, and you can choose to keep only 50% of the effect strength, for example. Let's say that I've removed this here, but then I think it seems too much like an effect and not realistic. In that case, I can fade it on a scale. Therefore, I keep it on a percentage. For example, in this case, 50% of the effect of the last brush stroke. You can fade it at 0%, as if you remove the effect, or up to 100%, as if you didn't change anything with this command. Another thing you can see me do is to zoom in and out to check the picture from all distances, to look at it and see if there's something that will impress me and which I want to remove or fix. Sometimes, for my convenience, I rotate the picture left to right to make it easier for the movement of the hand and to not have to do both horizontal and vertical movements, as well as to be able to make straighter lines. This option is available by pressing the R key on your keyboard, or you can use the tool that rotates the canvas. You can find it right here under Hand. To use this option, you need to activate OpenCL in the settings. This option should be active by default, but if not, it can be found by going to the Edit menu, Preferences, Performance, and then on Advanced Settings, you will find Use OpenCL. After turning it on, you should be able to rotate. Please note that if it was inactive and you have activated it, you may need to restart the program to have the change go into effect. To reset the view, press Escape or click Reset View. It's just a rotation of the canvas. Don't worry, it won't change your picture. This option only simplifies the way you work and helps you work more efficiently. It's very important how much time you devote to this step to eliminate major flaws. The more precise this phase of the processing is carried out, the more beautiful the end result will be and the easier the next steps will be. If you want to check your work so far, press Alt and click on the eye of the layer to turn off all other layers and leave visible only the one you choose. You can see the work we've done so far and get an idea of how the picture is improving. Now that you've seen what the cleaning process is, we should pay special attention to dodge and burn to understand how to use them properly.